Having recovered his political rights and with all convictions against him overturned, former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva said he was the victim of the biggest legal lie in 500 years. On Wednesday, Armenia appointed a new military chief after his predecessor was dismissed for calling on the Prime Minister to resign. In Palestine, Israeli occupation forces demolished 2 inhabited Palestinian buildings in the West Bank village of Ain Shalbi on Wednesday. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Gladys Quesada. Former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva held a press conference this Wednesday following the annulment of his convictions related to the Lava Jato case and the subsequent restoration of his political rights. Lula began his statements by recalling the moment in which he turned himself into the authority 3 years ago, reasserting his innocence in the face of the accusations against him. The former president also reviewed his experience in jail. Lula stated that he was the victim of the biggest legal lie in 500 years, and at the same time he thanked global movements and leaders for their solidarity. On Monday, Supreme Court Judge Edson Fachin overturned all the convictions against the former president for corruption brought in the framework of the highly discredited Operation Lava Jato, which opens the door for Lula to stand as the candidate in the upcoming elections.
I know that I was the victim of the biggest legal lie that has been told in 500 years of history. I know that my wife Marisa died because of the pressure. I was even forbidden to visit my brother because they made the decision that they wanted me to come to Sao Paulo, that I should go to the other city. They said that there could not even be photographs. So if there is a Brazilian who has reason to have deep wounds, and many wounds, it is me, but I do not have them.
In Chile, the Union of Santiago Metro Professionals and Technicians announced a selective strike to demand better salaries and denounced the lack of dialogue with the subway's board of directors. The union, which represents more than 1,800 workers, stressed that the possibilities of dialogue with the subway administration were not existent. In a statement, the union pointed out that management had forced the strike action by failing to include workers as an essential group in the COVID-19 vaccination campaign, reducing salaries during 2020, imposing massive layoffs and other labor abuses. At the same time, workers denounced the disproportionate weight of senior management. Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernández on Wednesday denied allegations made by the U.S. prosecutor that he helped smuggle tons of cocaine into the United States. Hernández took to Twitter describing the accusations as false testimonies and reiterating his claims that his accusers are using a magic key to avoid dying in a foreign jail. On Tuesday, New York prosecutor Jacob Godwill stated that in a federal court that the Honduran president was paid a $25,000 bribe in alleged drug trafficker Giovanni Fuentes, who is currently on trial. President Hernández was first linked to drug trafficking at his brother Tony Hernández's trial in 2019 by Leonel Rivera, the leader of a Honduran drug trafficking gang called Los Cachiros. In Argentina, feminist, transgender, and human rights movements, as well as trade unions, delivered a petition to President Alberto Fernández's administration to promote action to tackle gender-based violence. Our correspondent, Carolina Silvestre, brings us more details in the following report.
Among the demands made is to declare a national emergency due to violence against women and gender discrimination, and to allocate special and appropriate budgets to sectors involved.
We need real public policy and concrete measures because in cases of feminicides, we have seen that restraining orders are violated by the aggressors, and we have to regret feminicides. So in this case, for example, in Ursula's case, she was not listened to. There was a restraining order that could be violated as in other cases. So we need to move forward preventive detention in cases of risk, to have some kind of record of complaints, to know the cases to be able to identify the perpetrators of violence.
Systematic training in the field for all personnel involved in these cases is another demand.
I think we need appropriate personnel in police stations so that when a person makes a complaint more than once, they can go and visit them and see what happened and everything and provide the necessary protection so it doesn't end up becoming a front page story. Both in the case of a feminicide or a transvesticide, as is not only women, but we include all those who are no longer here and for whom today we shout, we want to stay alive.
Effective and real coordination between the judicial branch, courts and prosecutors, law enforcement and municipalities to tackle each case is another point which representatives of all ideologies agree on.
How many more girls have to go through this situation before the laws are really taken seriously? Judicial reform is necessary, but there are a lot of laws that remain a dead letter because this same situation, because there is no respect, because the struggles women have been fighting for so many years and are embodied in these laws are not respected. They are not carried out in reality.
Legal regulations such as those surrounding comprehensive sexual education, which should be taught in all educational institutions in the country, are not.
It is something that has been calling us together for a long time. We have been demanding it for a long time, and today we reach a moment in which we say enough is enough. There can be no more patriarchal justice like we have now. We represent many women and comrades who cannot gather here, who are in the countryside, who are in different provinces of our country, but we fight under the same slogan, we are united.
With a massive mobilization that took place a few days ago, hundreds of demonstrators demanded that the highest court of the country complies with the Micaela law and other measures to prevent more death.
Carolina Silvestre, TeleSUR, Buenos Aires.
In the framework of the 21st session of the Cuba-Venezuela Intergovernmental Commission, Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel met with Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez to discuss bilateral and multilateral issues. The Cuban president reiterated the commitment to solidarity with Venezuela, as well as the will to continue perfecting cooperation in the current political and economic situation, worsened by the consequences of COVID-19. Díaz-Canel also condemned the coercive and unilateral measures imposed by the United States against Venezuela. Meanwhile, the Venezuelan vice president condemned the strengthening of the illegal U.S. blockade against Cuba. During the meeting, the two officials studied the bilateral work agenda, including the progress of cooperation projects. In Mexico, reforms to the law of electricity industry came into effect this Wednesday, limiting foreign monopolies in the sector. The amendments to the sector regulations allow the Energy Regulatory Commission to revoke privately held self-supply permits governed by the previous Electric Power Public Service Law that were obtained fraudulently. With the activation of the new legal framework, the authorities will review the agreements signed with independent energy producers, the compliance with these agreements, and the income returns for the federal government. As of this moment, the corresponding institutions will have 180 days to issue guidelines and regulations regarding the country's electricity system. And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Armenia appointed a new military chief on Wednesday after his predecessor was dismissed for calling on the Prime Minister to resign. Prime Minister Nicole Pashinyan dismissed the Army's chief of staff last month, accusing him of staging a coup after he called for the PM to resign. The Army chief's call on February 25th sparked mass protests, with the Prime Minister's supporters and critics flooding the streets of the capital, Yerevan. Calls for the Prime Minister to leave his post began in November when he signed a Russian brokered ceasefire agreement with Azerbaijan that ended 6 weeks of fighting over the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. And the anti-government protests continue in Armenia, demanding the resignation of Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan after signing a peace agreement that ended the dispute in the Nagorno-Karabakh region. About 2,000 citizens joined the protests in the streets of the capital, Yerevan, again demanding the Prime Minister's resignation and for snap elections to be held. Pashinyan, a 45-year-old former journalist who came to power after leading large street protests in 2018 that ousted his predecessor, has defended the peace deal as the only way to prevent the Azerbaijani army from overrunning the entire Nagorno-Karabakh region, which lies within Azerbaijan but was under the control of ethnic Armenian forces backed by Armenia, since a separatist war that ended in 1994.
Citizen of the Republic of Armenia, I joined this struggle a long time ago. I came to support the statement of the Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Republic of Armenia, all the armed forces who spoke out against the national government for the preservation of the sovereignty of the Republic of Armenia.
And Russian President Vladimir Putin and his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan vowed to improve cooperation as they launched the third phase of a new reactor at the Turkey's first nuclear power plant in Akuyu via video conference this Wednesday. The two leaders each pressed a button on their office desk in Moscow and Ankara in a video link ceremony unveiling the third phase of the plant's construction project. The two countries signed an intergovernmental agreement in May 2010 for the construction of the nuclear power plant located in the southern coast of Turkey in Mersin province. Construction should be completed by 2026, the cost of which is estimated will be $20 billion. Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman met with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov during a visit to the kingdom during which they reviewed bilateral relations and areas of cooperation. The two officials addressed issues of mutual interest as well as developments at the regional and international levels, in addition to coordinating efforts to enhance security and stability. The meeting was also attended by the Saudi Minister of Energy, the Minister of National Guard, the Deputy Minister of Defense, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and Minister of State and member of the cabinet. On the Russian side, the meeting was attended by the presidential envoy to the Middle East and North Africa, the Deputy Foreign Minister, and the Russian ambassador to the country. In Spain, the regional president of Madrid, Isabel Díaz Ayuso, stepped down and dissolved her own legislature, triggering snap elections. The move came after the Citizens Party withdrew its support for the Conservative Popular Party in the regional government of the southeastern region of Murcia and announced a surprise pact with the Socialist Workers' Party. The Citizens Party then presented a vote of no confidence in the Murcia government, which, if successful, will give the party the regional presidency. The move sparked concern that the same will happen in Madrid, where Citizens was also in a coalition with the Popular Party of Ayuso, leading to her decision to step down and call an election for May the 4th. In Myanmar, police forces repressed groups of railroad workers who are on strike against the military government. Thousands of heavily armed soldiers and police surrounded protesters in a residential area of Malwagan district in the center of the former capital, Rangoon. Railroad workers, who have been an active part of the protest movement against the military takeover, denounced that at least 60 people have lost their lives during the brutal repression by security forces. They also stressed that their strike and street barricades will be maintained. President of Ivory Coast, Alassane Ouattara, this Wednesday announced the death of Prime Minister Ahmed Bakayoko following cancer treatment at a German hospital. 56-year-old Bakayoko took over as Prime Minister in July last year, following the death of Amadou Gon Coulibaly, who had spent 2 months in France being treated for health problems. Bakayoko was also the country's defense minister himself, having traveled to France for health reasons on February 18th, before being transferred for treatment to Germany. Bakayoko's office had been filed in this absence with Patrick Ashi, previously Secretary General to the presidency. Meanwhile, a younger brother of the president was named interim defense minister. The United States Senate has confirmed Mary Garland as President Joe Biden's Attorney General, 5 years after the veteran judge was denied a seat on the Supreme Court. The Senate voted 70-30 to confirm the appeals court judge to the top Justice Department post. Among the 20 Republicans approving the nomination was Senator Mitch McConnell, who in 2016, as the then Senate Majority Leader, blocked President Barack Obama from seating Garland on the nation's highest court. Garland, aged 68, was a senior official in the Justice Department before being named a judge nearly 24 years ago. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Palestine, Israeli occupation forces demolished 2 inhabited Palestinian buildings in the West Bank village of Ain Shalbi on Wednesday. Village residents denounced the latest illegal Israeli action after occupation forces arrived with 5 bulldozers, claiming that the buildings were located in a military area. Those affected stressed that the Israeli regime is constantly destroying Palestinian property and communities in order to establish more illegal settlements, displacing thousands of Palestinian families from their land. According to the United Nations Humanitarian Affairs Office, nearly 200 Palestinian homes in the occupied West Bank were demolished by Israel during the first 7 weeks of this year.
Their government, Israel, is tyrannical, trying to displace people from their homes. They demolished houses on top of their owners and their sheep and water tanks. Our belongings were in the house. They got 5 bulldozers and destroyed the homes, saying this was a military area. We'll have to sit in the rain. What are we supposed to do? Isn't this what Israel wants? Isn't it? We had no shelter except these houses. Where do we go? This is what Israel wants. It is a small country, yet the world cannot stop it.
This Wednesday, Yahya Sinwar was re-elected for a second term as the head of Hamas political bureau in the occupied Palestinian territory of Gaza. Hamas chief Ismail Haniyeh congratulated Sinwar and said the election marked as victory for the Islamic resistance movement, which has controlled Gaza since 2007. Haniyeh added that the movement's smooth internal election process demonstrated Hamas' seriousness ahead of Palestinian legislative elections set for May 22nd and the presidential election to be held on July 31st, representing the first Palestinian elections in 15 years. Sinwar, a former commander of Hamas' military branch, served more than 2 decades in an Israeli jail before he was released in 2011 as part of a prisoner exchange.
Yahya Sinwar was elected head of the Hamas movement in the Gaza Strip in a transparent and fair democratic election process, in accordance with the governing regulations and laws governing this process. These elections are held every 4 years, periodically on specific dates, and it is part of Hamas' deep belief in the need for people to choose whoever represents them in various bodies and platforms, which are evidence of Hamas' seriousness in completing the electoral process at the national level.
Libya's parliament on Wednesday approved a unity government to lead the war-ravaged North African nation to December elections, hailed as a historic step towards ending a decade of chaos. After 2 days of intense debate under heavy security in the central city of Sirte, the parliament approved Prime Minister-designate Abdelhamid Dibach's cabinet, with 121 of the 132 lawmakers present voting in favor. The interim government must now tackle the country's many problems, from a dire economic crisis and soaring unemployment to crippling inflation and wretched public services following the destruction caused by the 2011 NATO-led invasion of the country and assassination of the leader Muammar Gaddafi. Pan-American Health Organization expressed its concern on Wednesday over the rise in COVID-19 cases in Brazil, after the country registered a record number of fatalities this week, with a rise in cases in almost all the states.
We are concerned about the situation in Brazil, and it provides a sober reminder of the threat of resurgence. Areas hit hard by the virus in the past are still vulnerable to infection today. Cases are on the rise in nearly every Brazilian state. And over the last week, the country reported its second highest rate of infections and its deadliest day since the pandemic began.
According to the Brazilian Health Ministry, the country registered a record 2,286 COVID-19 fatalities in the past 24 hours. A worrying surge of the virus in the South American country of 222 million, which has the world's second highest death toll, patched the figure past 2,000 for the first time. Many hospitals are close to breaking point as authorities struggle to deal with increasing cases. The country also registered its third highest number of daily coronavirus infections this Wednesday at nearly 80,000. Spanish Health Minister Carolina Darias announced that the country's different regions have agreed to restrictions on travel and the maintenance of a curfew during the Easter holidays, with the exception of Madrid.
The point of the agreement is that they be declared as coordinated actions in public health against COVID-19 during the period between 17 and 19 March 2021. In those territories in which it is a holiday on the 19th and 26th of March to April 9 throughout the country.
Pakistan has begun vaccinating the over 60s with Sinopharm doses donated by China in the second phase of its vaccination campaign following the inoculation of the health workers. The rollout to members of the public comes as the country reported an increase in infections, with the temporary closure of schools announced in some cities, among other measures.
What we have seen initially when the healthcare workers were vaccinating, we have seen some people have some reluctance for the vaccination. But now, have senior citizens, I'm saying that they are all very much interested for vaccination.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.